I obviously made a mistake in selling my stock in Amazon too soon, but a bigger mistake was made by somebody who rejected Warren Buffett at Harvard Business School. As a result, Warren went to Columbia Business School, and he went on to create the greatest investment career in the history of investing. He is an extraordinary investor, but also an extraordinary person. When you graduated from high school, you weren't as interested in academics, I assume, at that time?
I was not interested.
And your high school yearbook said he's likely to be a stockbroker, but he's very good in math. Why did you go to Wharton, and why did you only stay 2 years there?
I didn't want to go to college, but my dad wanted me to go to college. And we didn't have SATs then, but he practically would have done the SATs for me. So in the truth, I always wanted to please my dad. I mean, he was a hero to me and still is. So he kept kind of jollying me along and said, well, why don't we just fill out an application for the hell of it? And so he suggested Wharton, and I applied there, and they let me in. And after the first year, I wanted to quit and go into business. And my dad said, well, give it one more year. And so I went the second year, and I said, I still want to quit. And he said, well, you know, you've got almost enough credits. If you go to Nebraska, which I was quite willing to do, for 1 year, you can get out in 3 years. So that's what I did.
Has Wharton ever called you up and said, well, you're a half graduate, you should give us some money, or they never bother you?
So far, they haven't tried that line, but they may after they watch this.
So after that, you wanted to go to business school?
Yeah, I'd won some minor scholarship at Nebraska to go to any graduate school I wanted to, that they'd give me $500. And so I applied. My dad suggested Harvard, so I applied.
And you didn't get in?
I didn't get in. I mean, it took 10 minutes for the guy near Chicago interviewed me. So I spent about 10 hours going to see him. And he looked at me and he said, forget it. And
have you ever run into that guy again, or have you ever heard from him since?
No, he needs protection now.
So I guess Harvard doesn't come after you for money because they turned you down. But you went to Columbia Business School, and why did you go to Columbia?
Well, I was at the University of Omaha, what was then called the University of Omaha's library, in August, and I was leafing through catalogs, and I just happened to see that Columbia had Graham and Dodd as teachers, and I'd read their book, but I had no idea that they were teaching. So I wrote Dean Dodd, and I said, dear Dean Dodd, I said, I thought you guys were dead. I said, but now that I found out you're alive, I'd really like to come to Columbia if you can get me in.
So you did, I assume, pretty well at Columbia Business School?
I did okay there, yeah.
What would you say is the reason for your ability to do this? Is it that you studied the companies more than anybody else? You stuck to your principles? You're smarter than other people? People were just caught up with fads? You didn't get caught up with fads? What would you say is the reason for this success?
Well, the first two to quite an extent. We bought businesses that we thought were decent businesses at sensible prices, and we had good people to run them, but we also bought marketable securities in Berkshire. Over time, the emphasis shifted from marketable securities over to buying businesses.
When you're doing these analyses then and now, do you have computers that help you, or how did you actually read all? Did you just get printed materials?
Pretty much the same way, except there's fewer opportunities now. But I met Bob Woodward back, and he'd just come out with all the president's men, and all of a sudden, below 30 years of age, he was getting quite wealthy, and we had breakfast or lunch over at the Madison Hotel, and he said, what do I do with this money? And I said, investing is just about assigning yourself the right story. I said, imagine Ben Bradley this morning said to you, what is the Washington Post company worth? What would you do if you have to write the story in a month? You'd go out and interview TV brokers and newspaper brokers and owners, and you'd try and value each asset. I said, that's what I do. I assign myself the right story. And it's nothing more than that. Now, there's some stories I can't write. If you ask me to write a story on, what is some glamorous but non-profit making business worth, I don't know how to write that story. But if you ask me to write a story on what is Potomac Electric Power worth or something like that, I can write the story, and that's what I'm doing every day.
People must call you every day and say, I have a deal for you, it's perfect. And how often do any of these deals ever pan out?
They don't call every day, and we've made our criteria fairly clear. So there's relatively few that call, and when somebody calls, I can usually tell within 2 or 3 minutes whether a deal's likely to happen or not. There's just a half a dozen filters, and it either makes it through the filters or it doesn't.
What is it that you would like to have as your legicy, as you think about it?
I'd like to be the oldest man that ever lived, actually. But no, I like teaching. And so if I've been a decent teacher, and I have a lot of university students come out every year,
And today, is there anything on your bucket list that you would like to do that you haven't done?
I'd have done it. If there's anything I wanted to do, I'd do it. Money has no utility to me. Time has utility to me, but money in terms of making trips or owning more houses or having a boat or something, it has no utility to me whatsoever.
So,
it has a lot of utility to other people, which is the reason for the giving pledge.
What motivates you to still run a company when most people your age are playing shuffleboard or they're relaxing or doing something?
Yeah, they spend all week planning their haircut usually. I get to do every day what I love with people that I love. I mean, it doesn't get any better than that.
Any word of advice you give to somebody who's a young investor who would like to emulate you, what you would recommend that they do to kind of build something close to what you've done?
I think you should look for the job that you would want to hold if you didn't need a job. I mean, you're probably only going to live once. Shirley MacLaine may differ with that, or a few people, and you don't want to go sleepwalking through life, and you really, whether you make X or 120% of X, really isn't remotely as important as to whether, in most cases, you marry the right person and you also find something that you would do if you didn't need the money. And I've had that job for 50 or more years.